Hello and welcome to the Warhammer Film Club, where every episode I am joined by a fantastic guest to talk about two movies that have had some impact on our hobby, history, or the history of Warhammer and Games Workshop. Today, we've got some really fun movies to come. We're going to be talking about The Running Man from 1987 and a Hammer horror film called Captain Kronos Vampire Hunter. And I am joined by my good friend Stu from the Miniature Realms channel. Stu, how are you doing today? You all right?
Really good. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me on. I've been enjoying watching these and looking at some of the other names that you've had on. I feel like I'm a last-minute substitute. Like someone...
No, not at all.
No one's been injured, and I haven't stepped in the last minute. But
obviously, we record the GW book club together, so we read a lot of books and we talk about a lot of Games Workshop books. I thought it would be fun to pivot our conversations to a couple of movies, and for us to just get to relax and unwind a little bit with a different type of media. So
absolutely,
we've got two really interesting films, and I think although they're very different, I think there are some interesting little overlaps and comparisons that I think we'll probably come across as we get into them. But we're going to start with
bad acting.
Not just bad acting. No, there's some great acting throughout these. There's some real over the top stuff that's a lot of fun. And I suppose that is the commonality across both, is that they're very fun, even if they're rough around the edges at times. I think they're both good fun. And the first film, this was your choice. So this is Running Man from 1987. Yeah. So this was obviously stars Arnie. It's based on a Stephen King short story, a novel, in fact, written under his pseudonym of Richard Bachman.
Richard Bachman, yeah.
And then this adaptation was written by Stephen E. D'Souza, who is a very successful action movie writer. So he wrote Die Hard, he wrote Die Hard 2, he wrote Commando, he wrote Judge Dredd with Stallone. So like real like credentials on the writer. The director, less well known, I think. Paul Michael Glazer I don't think he did that much in the movie sphere. I think he did a couple of movies, not any that I've seen other than this. A lot of TV stuff, I think.
Right.
But Arnie is the big draw for this movie, I think. Right. This from top to bottom is an Arnold Schwarzenegger vehicle.
Yes, it feels like it was part of an era where he was action movies, and every teenage, let's be honest, mostly teenage boys up until young adults, I suppose, men in their 20s maybe, wanted to see films with Arnie kicking butt, killing people, shooting things, blowing up things. And it feels like that was the sort of the library of videos that I wasn't able to see at home at that age, that I was watching around friends' houses, and they're all there, whether it's Commando or whether it's it's just Arnie films, and this is unashamedly an Arnie film for sure.
Because this is part of that era where it was like, so Arnie and Stallone were kind of going head to head. In some ways you'd get Bruce Willis in the mix as well at times. There were other action stars as well, your Van Dammes and your Steven Seagals and such. But like Arnie and Stallone were like the big blockbuster headliners. But the films that they were making, like the action movies they were making, were just wild, off the wall, like high concept, super high concept stuff. I mean, yeah, you would have like, okay, what if Arnie is a robot sent from the future? But then you would also get like, what if Arnie is a prisoner in a dystopian TV show? And then Stallone's doing Demolition Man, where he's a maniac cop frozen in ice for 60 years or whatever it is. You just get these there were loads of sci-fi movies. There's some of the best sci-fi, I think.
Yeah, Total Recall was
right,
and that was a toss-up where I was going to pick that for this as well. I mean, some of this is because all your guests in the first series have picked all of the. And I don't mean this in a bad way, the obvious kind of connections with Warhammer, because that's kind of why we're here, isn't it? The connections with Warhammer. Yeah. And there are sort of some tangentially, but still, it was.
I think there's some. No, I'm sure we'll explore it as we go. There are some real vibes of Warhammer
Mm.
scattered throughout Running Man, I think. There's like whether that's in sort of certain elements of the design or just the like storytelling or some of what we're seeing, even some of the satirical elements, like that feels quite Warhammery.
Yeah, that's a
Certainly of
big
that
part of it for
era,
me.
of the 80s. So this is 1987 that this came out. So this is the same time as Rogue Trader is coming out. And it's kind of got not the same kind of satirical approach, but like there is a lot of shared, culturally, I think there's a lot of stuff around, like the sort of the almost the Reaganite kind of big business taking over sort of thing that you see in the like TV host in this. Like it's very, and you see it in like RoboCop and other stuff like that. Like corporations being the sort of big evil operators
Yeah,
and kind of taking over and becoming the dangerous force, that kind of thing in a slightly different way, because that flows through 2000 AD and Judge Dredd and stuff as well. All of that
yeah,
kind of makes its way into Warhammer in a way. When you get the satirical stuff about like big organizations and the scale of stuff and how inconsequential life is to
yeah.
these like monolithic organizations, that kind of stuff is all in the mix through a lot of these films.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. I think it's twofold. I wasn't watching this in '87 when it came out. I would for a start, but back then, it used to take a good 2-3 years for things to come out on
Easy.
on video back then. So I would have been watching this early '90s, around the time that I was first getting into Warhammer. So
Right.
the links there that you were just describing were both real, in terms of the story, and also tangible in terms of what I was reading, and playing with
Mm.
Warhammer. So it was twofold. So part of my reason for choosing it was that connection with my own nostalgia, I suppose, and also connections. And it reminded me of this when we were covering Dark Future stories over on the Books Club as well,
Yeah.
because there's loads in its tongue-in-cheek kind of post-economic crash, slightly dystopian world where it's a police state that rules via propaganda, and that the corporations are sort of state-run or run the world. That just could be a story told in one of those
Yeah.
Dark Future books that we covered, and I think that's part of it as well. And so around this time, I was playing Rogue Trader, but I was also playing Dark Future,
Yeah.
and playing original Necromunda Confrontation as
Right.
well from the White Dwarf pages. So this is why this film reminds me of that era. So partly it's a nostalgia trip, but then as an adult looking back on it and peeling away the layers, then the actual story and the politics of this story match all of the stuff I was playing. I didn't realize at the time. All I
Yeah.
cared about as a teenager was that someone got their Ghoulies chainsawed off. That was what I was interested in as a teenager. But looking back on it as an adult, there's all this correlation.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. Yeah, I mean the Dark Future connection, I think that's a really good one because it shares so much with that as well. And in terms of the world, I can only assume, although this would only be out a year or two before the Dark Future novels were being written by Jack Yeovil. There
Yeah.
is, he was a film critic. I wouldn't be surprised if he hadn't gone and seen the movie as soon as it came out, wasn't aware of it. But these kinds of films, as we say, these are high concept action movies. There is a huge amount of that in the Dark Future books. Like they're leaning, Mad Max is a very obvious one, but there is loads of stuff here, even around the way that you sort of, yeah, you have these corporations who run sanctioned operatives in the Dark Future universe. Here, they're running a slightly different type of bounty hunter because they're in this contained TV, like
Mm.
reality show environment. But it's still ultimately the same process. People being paid
Yeah.
to hunt down and kill other people, and you've got this dystopian landscape. But I mean, I suppose we haven't talked about what the movie's actually about, which is and it's super like prescient for where we are today, I think, in many ways,
Yeah.
because this is a
Scarily.
movie where it is a dystopian future. Corporations have an enormous amount of power. The most successful TV show in America and the world is called The Running Man, where prisoners are taken and they're put into basically a life or death gladiatorial game where they get to run through it's essentially they've like closed off an entire part of a dystopian LA city, and the
Yes.
prisoners get to run through that. And if they get to the end of this course, they escape and they get to go off to Barbados or wherever it is. But the challenge is that there's a load of bounty hunters who are, very theatrical, have been sent in to kill them. Literally hunt down and kill them if they can. And our hero of the movie is Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he's playing a character called Ben, and he is a pilot, a helicopter pilot. He is ordered by the military to shoot on rioting civilians who are like rioting because they want like medicine,
Food, I think.
yeah, or food. Yeah, sounds right. And he refuses. He refuses to follow the order. Has a bit of a fight with the other soldiers in the helicopter who want to follow the order. He's taken out, and the sort of attack run commences. And then all of that that massacre is pinned on him, and they deep fake the video footage to change it so that he was the one who wanted to run this assault on innocent civilians, and that is how he ends up on the run. He has an interaction with he basically takes a woman hostage in order to try and get away. She turns on him, and then he gets arrested and thrown into the Running Man. She then ultimately is brought in as well because she starts to believe his version of events and finds some of that deep faked footage. But yeah, that's essentially the setup. I've made it sound more complicated than it was. He gets captured, he gets put into the Running Man games, and then he's being chased around by ridiculously over the top sanctioned operatives, basically.
Yes. Yeah. It's the whole misinformation thing, the whole doctored deepfake stuff is scarily modern, isn't it? But
it really is.
It's something that I think. I'm trying to think about how I felt about it when I was a kid and watched it. I probably didn't care too much because, again, you're looking for the gory parts. But the fact that he was sent to prison, wasn't he? The film opens with this prison break with him and two other inmates who sort of turn out to be sort of semi-underground freedom fighter types, don't they? They know people, and he eventually, obviously, as you described, gets caught. I think when he goes looking for his brother, doesn't he? He goes and finds out his brother's been sent off for re-education.
Yes.
And what's her name? I'm going to forget now. Amber, isn't it? Amber Mendez. She's in his brother's flat,
right?
And she's a musician or something. And he kidnaps her, gets caught, and then gets entered into the game. So. There's more there than I realised the first time round because you just kind of skim over it. Probably because they don't emphasise the right parts in the same way as they would now if they were making the film, because it's all about the action scenes. When actually there's some good story there. That they could make a little bit more of the personal side of things if it was remade. Now I haven't seen the remake, by the way.
I've also not seen the remake.
So I've got a feeling it follows the book a bit more, which I've also read, which I recommend. Go and read the book because the book's different, quite wildly different in places.
Because am I right? So the having seen the trailer for the new movie, it seems more like the Running Man games are just kind of out and about in the real world.
Yeah, and that's what it's like in the book as well.
Okay.
He's slightly different. He basically wants money for medicine in the book, but I don't want to spoil the book for people. But the premise is the same. He's running, but he's not confined to a city block or whatever it is that's been locked off. You're running off in public, and you're out there in public, and he has to log his camera footage every 24 hours or something. Otherwise, otherwise he forfeits his chance of winning the money, because it's all about winning money.
Oh, that's interesting. As well. Yeah, that's really interesting.
It's good. It's really good. Anyway, but we'll get sidetracked on it because the book's probably better than the film, as quite often is the way.
Sure.
But I think there's lots there. When you describe the plot, it feels, I don't know, it feels better than what's delivered. Really, I enjoy the film from a light entertainment.
It is light entertainment. I think that's a better way to describe it.
There's not a lot of great acting performances in there. I think Damien, I think Killian's good. I think that character comes across well.
This is the host
The
of the
the
show, right?
the host of the show.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think he's good in the film.
because he's a proper
There's
sleaze bag. He's really like,
Yeah, and
yeah,
it comes across really well, and the audience works. That's like pure dark future. That
it
feel
is.
it feels good, and it doesn't matter that Arnie's not good because Arnie's Arnie, and then the supporting good characters are a little bit bland, I suppose. And
Yeah, I
the
mean,
and
there's a couple of people in that in the supporting roles. So one of the people who are in it, so Laughlin is one of those guys that he frees that Arnie escapes from prison with at the start of the movie,
yes,
and who turns out to be a resistance fighter. That Laughlin's played by Yaphet Kotto, who was
yeah,
also in Alien, and
yes,
and he is just a fantastic actor. I think he's absolutely brilliant, great presence, and he's also a big guy as well. So you kind of get like a
hmm
good. There's a bit of tension between him and Arnie to start with, but it's that kind of classic '80s action movie dynamic where they, even though there's tension between them, they come to respect one another. And then there's a bit of a sacrifice play later on as well. So like you
yes,
get some good stuff with that. Um, Perhaps more surprising is the leader of the resistance. So I find this is just totally bizarre. The leader of the resistance, Mick, is played by Mick Fleetwood off of
yes,
Fleetwood Mac,
yes,
and it's just inexplicable. I mean, because even within the context of the movie, he might actually be playing himself because
yeah.
it's set in a slight dystopian future, and at some point he talks about like, oh, back in the day, like when he was in a band or whatever, when he was playing music. So is it like Mick Fleetwood is actually like the leader of the future resistance? I hope so. I hope he's playing himself because I think that's just ridiculously brilliant.
I've not googled it to find out whether there's anything there, but yeah, it would be fun.
It would be
And
fun. It would be fun. Totally nonsense, but yeah, he's actually quite good. I think he's a little. He's not the greatest actor, but he's clearly got a bit of confidence, and he's kind of this.
it doesn't stand out as any worse as some of the other acting in the film. So.
Yeah, but so he kind of they managed to like they've got bomb collars on when they escape from prison, and
Mm,
he takes them all off. But he ultimately they end up finding the resistance because the secret signal, that whatever MacGuffin that the government and the corporation are doing, the satellite is inside the Running Man like arena, because this
yeah.
arena is this locked off dystopian and destroyed ruins of LA or wherever I think it's LA that it's set in, because they've sealed it off in order to film their games. That was the perfect place to hide a satellite. So when they're inside and Arnie and co are all like caught up in the games, there's also this then sort of pivot to, whilst we're here, we can help the resistance by cutting off the like whatever the satellite is beaming out into this the propaganda and stuff. So you kind of get
Yes. Yeah.
this merging of like the resistance fighter subplot with the Arnie in the Running Man Gladiator games. Kind of the two things
Yes.
cross over.
They do, and then the added layer of finding the real footage from the Bakersfield massacre,
Sure.
so that the public knows what really happened. So no longer is he the butcher of Bakersfield; he can be the hero cop who was framed.
Yes.
At the same time, in this perfect world where if someone
Yeah.
watch that video and go, oh,
That's the
um,
thing, and that so, and then maybe this is like the in my modern rewatch. I'm sure at the time when I've watched this because I've seen this movie so many times back in the day, like it was just good fun, and you're like, yeah, no worries. Not to not to go into a completely different topic, but what was a bit sad for me about watching the end of this film now in the sort of modern era was like it's just so neat and tidy, and
yeah,
like you even get to like people when the host of the show is outed as like they use deep fakes and they've sent innocent men into this games, and actually the host is a bad guy and the corporation's not so good and all this sort of stuff. Everyone turns on them, and everyone's like, no, you're doing bad stuff, I can't support you anymore. And like the truth is out, and Arnie gets away scot free because the deep fake is revealed, and like there's no like everyone justice is served, I suppose is the thing. As is classic in these
Yes.
kind of action movies, justice is served and it's a clean break. Everything's good again.
And we
And it
know that
and
that's
and
just not the way things
it's
work.
it's not how reality works. Sadly, sadly, it seems So the satire is kind of it doesn't quite have teeth because all the bad
Yeah.
guys get punished, like they either die or they get arrested, and then all the good guys, some of them do die, but all of the good guys who sort of make it to the end, they are off to live on the beach, sort of thing. So it's
Yeah.
very neat. It's very neat, and that's the light entertainment side of things, I guess, isn't it?
Yes. I think it's almost like the satire is there for the creators of the film rather than the audience.
Yeah, sure.
Because I'm not sure that I don't know. Maybe adult audiences in 1987 were picking up on it, but I'm not sure
I think
that's what
some
the
of it.
point of the film was
Yeah,
too
it's
much. And I
it's
wonder if
kind
that's something of a reevaluation now, particularly in the climate now, where some of the things that were in that film in 1987 have come to pass. So an
sure.
economic challenge collapse that
Yeah.
happened post that, and other things as well. We won't list the other. Obviously, the deep fakes, we can say that, but yeah, without going into sort of
Yeah.
rabbit holes we don't want to go into. But I do wonder now we can reevaluate those parts of the film, and maybe we give them too much emphasis as well based
Oh,
on
so
things that have happened.
I get what you're saying. I think certainly in some ways, I think that's fair. There's a modern kind of perspective on it, but I don't want to do down some of the satirical elements of the script because there's some stuff that is like very clearly a satirical joke at the time that plays really well. I mean, I jotted down a couple of things that I think are fantastic. So one is there is when the host of the show sees footage of Arnie like on the run from his prison break, and he's like, "I want that guy in the running games. He'll be a perfect contestant." He turns to his like PA and says, "Get me the Justice Department Entertainment Division," which I think is fantastic. And then later on, someone talks about the president's agent. Like, we need to get the president's agent on the phone, which is all
Yeah.
brilliant. You also see like RoboCop style, like little adverts for other shows at certain points. And there's one where you just
Yes.
climb. There's like dollars going up a rope, and you have to climb. And there's
Yes.
like dogs and stuff at the bottom. Like that's right, like the Newcomb board game in
So
RoboCop.
in the book, there are other shows.
Right.
That so as ways you can make money, and I think one of them is basically you running on a treadmill, and it's for people that have medical conditions, so they shouldn't physically be able to run on a treadmill, and the longer they stay on, the more money they can earn towards medical procedures. So you might have someone with like really bad coronary disease or heart problems or something running on a treadmill, and people are watching this and they die live on television. So it's
Right.
that kind
Okay.
of dark
Like
and
really super
so
dark.
there's
Yeah.
elements there that have obviously come over
Oh, that's cool.
from
Yeah.
King's writings. So
Yeah,
they're
I
real.
like that. I mean, and yeah, you will because you've also got. I think when they get Arnie into the show, he gets a court-appointed theatrical agent instead of a court-appointed
Yes.
lawyer. Like that, it's silly, but I think that's funny. I mean that does sort of remind me of like 2000 AD. That's kind of Mega City One
Yes.
stuff. I think you would see. Um, just before I think it's just before they go into the games. He's wearing his like prison overalls, his prisoner overalls, and then
Yeah.
it turns out it's breakaway clothing, and they tear it off, and he's got his Running Man lycra on underneath,
Yes.
I'm all for that. I think that sort of thing is very funny because it's so over the top. It's absolutely brilliant, just completely ridiculous. Um, I did find myself thinking that watching the show in the universe is probably not that much like as a live audience member because there's going to be loads of dead air like where you're not entirely sure what's happening like because obviously as the in the movie like and as viewers of the movie we're just cutting to all of the best bits so we're
Yeah.
Arnie goes on that you go on this absurd like rocket propelled cage that launches you into the games and then he's running about and then he's fighting a guy and then he's hiding and then he's running and stuff all of the stuff where they're running and searching in between the fights. Like, what are you doing in the audience? In the
I'm
live
guessing
audience?
it's on screens, isn't it? I
Yeah,
mean,
you're watching it on screen, but you're literally just like watching a guy like walking around.
you're forgetting that people used to stand outside in the rain on a Friday to watch the Big Brother eviction show.
That's
This is
true.
this is what
That's
people
true.
do.
Yeah,
This
no,
is what
you're
people
quite
do.
right. People watched 30 episodes, 30 days worth of Big Brother, actually. So I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm completely wrong. People will absolutely watch people just like walking around like this for
They really would,
hours and hours.
yeah.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Which of the I forget what they call what do they call the actual the bounty hunters like the I can't remember
Oh,
the
that's a
term they've got for them.
good question.
Which of those
Does he-
guys did you like the most? Because there's a couple
Um,
that you see.
they're all. I always like Jesse Ventura and stuff. So Captain Freedom's quite
He's so good in
comical.
this. I know, and
Yeah.
we don't need to talk about him as in the real world, but in
Yes.
this movie, he's fantastic. He's really good.
Yeah, he is good. He was good playing that role in quite a few films in this
Yes,
era.
yes, yes.
Usually Arnie films, funny enough, but the character he plays is quite funny, especially as he realizes that he might be in danger as he watches the other hunters. Or were they hunters? I can't remember if they're called hunters or not.
Something like that, isn't it? Yeah.
Bounty hunters, whatever they were. But as he sees them dying, and he realizes, hang on a minute, I'm actually going to have to do some work tonight. But they're all quite funny, I suppose. So you get the typical Arnie lines when he kills them off. There's probably less of those cheesy lines in this film as some other Arnie films, but
Yeah, there must be
I
a
don't
couple.
know.
I can't remember them right now.
Yeah, I'm saying I have just said that, and I can't remember any of them at this point. Yeah, because you got Sub Zero. Yeah, but we're going to have
Sub
to.
Zero is
Sub Zero's one of them, and there's Buzzsaw,
Buzzsaw,
Dynamo,
Fireball.
Fireball,
Yeah,
and Dynamo. Yeah,
right.
they're the.
I like Dynamo a lot. So he's an opera singing like electricity guy who turns out to be obviously, these are all terrible guys, but he's got a tiny little car, which is quite funny. I quite like
It is.
that, and I like that he does his opera singing to like announce his arrival. I thought that was quite funny. He obviously, I mean, he survives the actual games, but then turns out to be a total creep later on.
Yes,
And kind of gets his comeuppance, which is
he certainly does.
well
Yes.
deserved. Yeah, I think Fireball is like very cool and kind of there's an interesting because there's sort of a little twist within it where there's talk throughout the movie of like these three contestants who escaped, who succeeded, beat the Running Man. They got their $10,000 or whatever it was, and they got to go off to Barbados. And then again, turns out they've deep faked a load of footage, and actually they find the bodies inside the Running Man arena, and like Fireball has burnt them to a crisp, and then he's going to do the same to Arnie. So it's kind of this little escalation. The hope that you could escape and get through it is taken away halfway through, which is kind of fun. That sort of little twist reveal. Or actually, no one has ever beaten it. That's all a lie. Is quite good.
Yeah. It's no surprise, I suppose, especially with the other things. You by that point you already know that there is already deep fakes going on, and we know that the corporation is corrupt, and so it's not a surprise, but it just adds more layers to that kind of idea of this is betrayal, and all it is propaganda and dumb trash TV of the worst kind imaginable, even worse than you can get in the real world, because we're not as yet killing people live on TV for sport. We'll watch this space, but it kind of makes sense that they kind of add more of those layers into it. So I think it works.
It does, yeah, and it's. I think it's also supposed to like heighten the threat of Fireball because like he's responsible for it as well. So yeah, I think it is good. I mean, he obviously there's like some good action scenes where, well, I say good action scenes. These are not the best action scenes in Arnie's career.
They're a little bit light actually.
Punching a guy, basically. I quite like the buzzsaw fight. That's pretty good. Yeah, the Sub-Zero one's on ice, isn't it? And they wrap him in like barbed wire, which is pretty good. And then yeah, Fireball explodes, obviously.
Yes, he wins the title for the worst name. I mean,
yeah, some nominative determinism for Fireball, I think, going on there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Should we workshop this name a bit more? No, it's done. Let's go over.
But yeah, I mean, I think like as a movie, yes, it's big trash, right? It is a very trashy movie. It's very of its time. But if you have nostalgia, as we
Mm.
both do, for that era of like Macho Man action movies, which are very silly, and that we have moved on as a society from them, which is good. But I still have a little place in my heart for this kind of silly, muscle bound nonsense. Like it's still fun to go
Yes.
back to. Super high concept, a bit of sci-fi, a bit of action, and just the whether they can act or not, and Arnie just has charisma. He has screen presence. There are some performances he's done that are really good. There are some that are a bit clunkier, but I find him always fun to watch, I would say.
Yes. Yeah, it's he completely gets away with not being able to act, especially, and he gets better as he
He
gets
does
older.
improve, I think, over his career for sure.
Yeah, of course. I mean, he wasn't an actor to start with. He was. He was brought in for his physique, and
Sure,
it
yeah.
kind of worked. And we got into other films, but it works in Conan actually because
Yeah.
it works with the character. In things like this, it probably doesn't work as well, but the whole style of film means you get away with it anyway.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. Did you know apparently that Arnie's role was originally cast for with Christopher Reeve
Was it?
was going to play Ben Richards. Yeah.
Oh,
And they had it, I believe they like signed contracts and everything was ready to go. Then there was some sort of like production delay that released Reeve from the contract and he went off. I don't know if that's when he went off to do like Superman 4 and some of his own like
ah,
personal projects, but that's why they then moved to Arnie. Very interesting. I imagine it
hmm,
would be quite a different feel with Christopher Reeve
yeah,
in that role. Even if a lot of the other elements were the same, I still think it would be quite different.
yeah. I think so. You wouldn't have had the cheesy Arnie kill gags, which I still
No,
can't remember. But you I think that would have been filmed differently. I can see it working though. I can see
I can see it
how
working
it
because
might have worked.
Reeve was a big, he's like kind of got that lean, like American football player
Mm,
physique, right? And he's very tall, has a great physical presence of his own. Very different physical presence to Arnie, but I could
yes.
imagine him doing some really interesting stuff with it. And then also, I think it would probably bring something more. Maybe it would be weightier in some of
Mm.
the sort of the betrayal and the military stuff and the all the deep fake stuff. I could imagine that having a little bit more of an edge with a Reeve in that
I
role.
think so. I think so. It's hard to imagine though, and I'm struggling now to remember him in films other than Superman. So it's very hard
Sure,
for me
he's
to
good, good
picture him.
actor. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
obviously iconic for Superman, but I think that in other films he does show very different sides, very different
Mm.
performances. Um, so yeah, I think it would have been really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see. I didn't know that, but yeah, I can see a version of the film where it
Yeah.
might have even been better.
But yes, a quite an interesting, fun, trashy film. That probably is a good description of our
Hmm.
other feature that we've watched. So this was Captain Kronos Vampire Hunter. So this is
Yes.
a Hammer horror film that is, I think, a really interesting departure for Hammer. So they were really
Mhm.
going for something that was quite different at this point. So this is 1974, and it's basically like an action. It's like a Hammer horror action film in a way, kind of a swashbuckling adventure, I suppose you would say.
Yes.
And it is literally this guy called Captain Kronos who is riding around, um, and is basically doing swashbuckling adventure stuff to fight vampires. He's going to these small towns, he's encountering like suspicious locals, and he's chasing down these different vampires everywhere. Um, I think that there is I really enjoyed this film for all of its like absurdity and like it is, it's cheesy at times. It's got like a completely dubbed main performance. So like the voice is quite strange and the main actor can be a bit stiff at times. He looks great, but
Yes.
there's kind of a certain stiffness to him in this performance. Horst Janssen is the name of the actor who physically played Captain Kronos. But yeah, there's there's a lot of things that you would say, okay, that makes this film not great, or in fact bad. But there's also a lot to really enjoy, I think. I mean, how did you find it? Is this the first time you've watched it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not a huge watcher of Hammer horror films. It's not something nothing against them, but it's just something I've never really indulged. I've watched some, obviously. I think most people have seen the odd one or two
Mm.
if you're over a certain age. But I wouldn't class myself as a sort of a connoisseur of Hammer horror. But it's not what I expected, based on what I've seen before. So your opening description of that it's different, then yes, I can imagine it's pretty different to normal. I liked it a lot more than I thought I would. And it's very easy to. I mean, you can tell me why you think where's the Warhammer connection, but I think it's really really strong. You could, yes, it's set in a maybe post-Napoleonic War or mid
Yeah, I think
1850s or
so.
something like that period in Europe, but it's so rural that if you squint enough, you could pretend that it was in the Empire, couldn't you? You really could.
Oh, you
I think you
absolutely
really
could.
could.
Yeah, 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 for sure.
There's only a couple of uniforms that sort of portray themselves as slightly more modern, and even then, you may have seen a version of it in the Empire and certain
Yes.
troops anyway,
Yeah,
like a
I think so.
pistolier or something like that. So yeah, I played a game in my head while watching it. As let's pretend this is set in the Empire, and it works. You could write that as a Warhammer story for
Yes.
sure.
I
And
think
I really
absolutely
enjoyed
you
it.
could. Yeah, I think absolutely you could. I think you're right. Yeah, there's a few things that maybe feel a little too modern, as in, like Napoleonic or what have you. But for the most part, the look and the feel especially, is like really Warhammery. So
Mm,
it is the spirit of it is that the adventurous spirit and the sort of swashbuckling nature. This is pure Warhammer fantasy roleplay. But like,
yeah,
even when it comes to the actual, like, Hammer horror played a big role for Rick Priestley in particular, but the other creators of Warhammer fantasy and writers on the battle game and the role playing game side. But Rick Priestley has specifically called out this movie as being one of the Hammer horror films that was just like present. Whether or not they were
yes,
like, oh, we're going to specifically make Captain Kronos into our game. It wasn't quite like that, I don't think, but it was like that style of swashbuckling adventure should be possible in the world we're building. If we're going to play Warhammer
yeah,
Fantasy Roleplay, that is how it would play out. This is a vampire hunter, or what would become a witch hunter in the Empire. The way in which they interact, all of the sort of vampiric stuff, because the vampires are quite interesting here as well, and they're not quite
yeah. They're
traditional
different.
vampires, which I really like because they're set up like I mean, the movie is literally just Captain Kronos comes into a small town. There have been some disappearances and deaths that have happened, because of potential vampire activity. There's actually a really cool opening scene with like two girls in the forest, and one of them gets attacked, and so there's this sort of mystery is created. Um, but then Captain Kronos is just investigating it and discovers that it is vampires and that there's a little um like vampiric bloodline in the local area, and uncovers that and then fights against that. It's really simple, but the world that they create, I think, is really fun. So
Mm,
there are different types of vampire, different bloodlines that operate differently. So when they're actually trying to work out the bit of the investigation into, are these vampires at all? And if they are, what kind of vampires are they? All of that sort of stuff is like really interesting, really cool
yeah,
idea. Like the way these guys work is that they might have a reflection or they might not have a reflection. They might be vulnerable to this or not vulnerable to certain things. So I really like they have to work out how to kill these specific vampires. So there's like a
yes.
really good bit halfway through, or roughly halfway through, where one of their friends has been turned into a vampire, and they're trying to kill
Yes.
him. And
Trying all the
he
different
was,
ways.
yeah, he was sort of up for it because he's like, I don't want to, don't let me become a monster. But they
Yeah.
have to put him through some pain because they don't know how to kill, because vampires are impossible to kill.
It
Basically,
sounds really comical when you're describing it. It didn't. It wasn't quite as funny watch.
Yeah, I mean, it's more horrific. but it's also like it's quite interesting because you have to work. I just really like that you don't know for sure that it's always
Yes.
going to be garlic. It's always going to be a stake through the heart.
Yes.
So that was quite cool. And there's also like cool lore as well. Like a vampire only bleeds at the moment of its death. So like there's that
Yes.
kind of there's just some cool stuff. Like it's cool, I
Yeah.
think.
I love the main way, or the vampire we first see. Its way of killing. It's a mystery. You don't see the vampire, but afterward, the woman that's attacked is left aged by about 60, 70 years
Yeah.
in an instant, and she then in some cases manages to stagger home before she dies of old age, or she's a crone straight away and just dies instantly. And that's taking of life force is really interesting, and yeah, feels so Warhammer, doesn't it?
It
It's
does.
it's not the traditional vampire, I drink your blood kind of thing. It's far more than that, far more grim and scary in some ways. That was, as soon as that first scene, the opening scene, I was like, yeah, this is good. This is different.
Yeah.
This is not quite as run of the mill cheesy vampire. I'm gonna like this.
I think yeah, and there's like so then you get after that opening sequence, which I really liked it. I thought it was really it sets the scene and the tone really well. It
Mm.
is like this is a horror film, but then you immediately follow with like Captain Kronos riding like to you get the opening credits and just loads of footage of him just riding about on his horse, and it but that kind of has like that's an old school vibe, but it also sort of it juxtaposes the two things the film's going to do, which is the horror element with these vampires, and then this guy with a sword who carries a katana inexplicably. Not they never talk about why. So this is like a former Napoleonic officer or around that time who just
Yeah,
happens to carry a katana for some reason
yeah, and
because
is
it's cool.
really bad with it, but at the same time really good with it. The tavern scene when he kills three ruffians, he he kind of really slowly does two strokes, but then they're all precision shots, and three of them's kind of well, it's
It's
not
quite
even they even drop; they even stagger and die afterwards. That was terrible acting, wasn't it? It's like the
yeah,
way you pretended to die as a child when you were playing, and you
that's
take about
exactly what
20
that was.
steps.
Yeah, that's very true. But that whole that sequence, like, because that's riffing on like samurai cinema, right? Where like
Yes.
Zatoichi would just slice, you just draw the sword and then put it away, and you wouldn't have
Yes.
even seen the cut, right?
But it doesn't quite work because the sword movement is in slow motion because he's slow, not because it's been slowed
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
down.
very true. Yeah, I mean, but like it's trying, it's aiming for that kind of
Yeah,
stuff, and that absolutely screams like RPG character to me. Like I've done
yeah.
that kind of thing, where you're like, oh, okay, so we're in the Warhammer we're in the Warhammer world. I'm creating my character. I want him to be like a vampire hunter or a witch hunter. Also, I guess I want him to have a katana, because that's the coolest sword. So that's what my guy does. He's just like, this is it's really cheesy, and really silly, but in a good way, in a fun way,
Yes.
I think.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think the one of those guys who so there's like a because the ruffians in the bar just sort of appear out of nowhere, cause a bit of trouble for no reason, and then essentially they're an excuse for Captain Kronos to take them out
Well,
and sort of
they've kind of been paid off, haven't they? They've
they
kind of
have
been
been paid
bribed
off.
to get in a fight with him and see if they can
Yeah,
maybe do something with it.
but they're
He's too
also like
skillful.
totally inconsequential because he kind of sets
Yes.
them up as like so they're hassling like the women in the bar, and they're kind of like, oh, these guys
Yeah.
are going to be a bit of a problem for Kronos, but there's I guess it sets up that actually Kronos is so far above just ruffians, like he's ready for the
That's what
proper
it's.
vampires
Yeah, I think
because
that's what it's
they're in
trying
like
to do
two
is set
scenes.
him up as a brilliant swordsman.
Yes, yeah, which does pay off later on.
Yeah,
Whether or
it
not
pays
the
off in the
choreography is
final
good,
scene.
there
Yeah.
is a cool fight scene later on where his like sword play
Sorry,
becomes
there is
super
a
relevant.
fight scene later on.
There is a fight scene later on, yes, cool or not, that uses his amazing sword skills, right?
Yes.
But there is some really cool, like there is some very, like legitimately, I think, cool and well, like composed shots and sequences. There's a
Mm.
lot of really nice use of light and dark. There's a lot of really nice use of like the frame. So there's loads of stuff where there'll be lots of other things in the frame that draw the eye as well, and kind of give certain scenes have this kind of oppressive feel, and you know because there's all this stuff around going on, and you don't quite know, okay, where are the vampires and what are they up to? So I think all of that works. Like it feels like someone's really putting a lot of effort into, even though it's
Yeah.
hobbled in certain ways. Like the like Kronos himself, the like I think the actor's okay, like the physical actor. The dubbing, which was done by Julian Holloway, is perfectly good, but that disconnect between it's literally someone else doing the voice. You can feel it, so it kind of adds a
Yeah.
certain it makes the whole film feel a little bit cheaper than it would otherwise. I think, which is a shame.
Agreed. Yeah.
But then you have like Kronos has a right hand man, so like a hunchback sort of cart, a guy who rides the cart, who sort of comes with him on his travels, and it's the two of them together, and he sort of helps him work stuff out and knows lots about vampire lore, and so obviously Kronos does all the physical stuff. He does a lot of the mental stuff.
He's the brains behind
He's the brains behind the
Grost,
operation.
isn't
Yeah,
he?
yeah, that's
Grost.
right.
Yeah. Professor
Yeah,
Grost.
Grost. Yes. And there's some really nice stuff with like Grost gets insulted by those ruffians, and
Yeah.
the way in which that like Kronos is like really respects his friend and like won't take it on his behalf. And
Yes.
it's like quite nice. Stuff like that is really nice. It builds the
Probably not very
relationship.
1974, really.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. He's quite open-minded in a way, I suppose, as well,
Yeah,
about a lot of things.
very, very.
Yeah.
And Grost is a little bit over sad afterwards. For a man of his age, it's almost like it's the first time anyone's ever taken the mick out of his hunchback. But
Well,
I'm
I
guessing they're
guess
trying to make a point.
he's being worn down by
Yes,
some of
yes,
these ruffians. When you go to a town and they're just jerks about it. So yeah, but
yes.
like yeah, again, it is in order for us to see the empathetic side of Kronos and to grow to like him as a man. Um,
Yes.
some of the stuff that I really enjoyed was like the little detection methods and some of the cool little tricks they do to try and work out where the vampires are and what the vampires are.
Toads.
So the toads, yes, I love this. So they have a little rhyme which I've written down because I thought it was really good. So they put a dead toad into a box and then they bury the box in the ground, and they'll do this like across the pathways in the forest. And the reason for that is that if a vampire should bestrode close to the grave of a dead toad, then the vampire life shall give, and suddenly the toad shall live. I love this. This is super cheesy, but I absolutely adore it. So the idea you put these dead toads into the boxes, and then if a vampire walks over or near the box, when you open the box up later on, the toad will be alive now. So you go back and
Yes.
check. It's so good. It's because it's such a weirdly specific. It feels very folkloric. It feels like
Yeah.
like a real thing, and it's it's just really specific and odd. Just such an odd thing. Even having this weird little rhyme is so strange that it makes it feel quite like I don't know. This sounds ridiculous. Makes it feel more realistic to me.
Yes. Yeah. No. I agree. And even in the film, it was the explainer for it is this is an old wives' tale essentially, but sometimes they are the best and they are true.
Yeah.
The rhyme I'm not so much of a fan of. It does sound like the first two lines sounds like it could turn into a limerick, but luckily it doesn't. But I do love the concept, and I thought it was a nice little extra scene which made them do more hunting and brains rather than just the flashy Kronos with a woman on arm always
Yeah.
chasing after the vampires.
Yeah, I like that. That's absolutely right. It makes it into like a more investigative. So there's more actual like we need to work these things out, and I am a big fan of that. I think that's much cooler and more interesting. That you have to sort of and you see this in like Black Library novels, right? Like the witch hunter novels and stuff like that, where it's not just given to you on a silver platter. Yes, they're action stories a lot of the time, but you also need to have like moments of realization and working out who the villain was and where they are. So
Yeah.
in this movie, there's a couple of like creepy siblings who are hanging around the graveyard who are like aristocrats, and there's kind of a suspicion cast on them as perhaps they've got, maybe they're the vampires and stuff, like because they all constantly going to the graveyard to see their father's grave and things like that. They will ultimately be revealed to both be human, but it is their parents who are the vampires. The
Yes.
mother has been like building up power to bring the dead father back. So that's the kind of final reveal. But you kind of get a nice little bit of like red herrings with those misdirects, and you're not quite sure.
Yeah.
There's a bit of peril. So Kronos has saved a woman, and she's ended up joining his party with Ghost, and then she goes into this house later on to the mansion and stays overnight, puts herself at risk so that Kronos can then, finally determine if the vampires are in there. So all of that stuff I think is neat. And there's also a very cool thing where Kronos has to forge, because they work out that you need you need iron, like blessed iron in order to kill these particular vampires. So he takes an iron cross and then melts it down and reforges it into a sword overnight. And it's just like, yes, this is cool. This guy's top.
Yes.
I'm a fan of Kronos.
Yes. It is good. It is good. And again, so Warhammerish, isn't it?
It is. It really at its sort of silliest and funnest kind of pulpy version of Warhammer. That you definitely feel a lot of that. I actually did. I really liked the duel at the end. So the sort of slight zombie vampire aristocrat who does come back. They then have a duel because there's a really good bit when the lady vampire is sort of transfixed with her own power. They sort of trick her into
Right.
transfixing herself, so she can't move. So then it's just the recently returned husband and Kronos who have to have their sword fight, which I think is
Yes.
great. Like it's a
And
good
they've
setup.
already set it up that he knew the husband back in his army days, or knew him to be a good swordsman and
Yes,
a fierce opponent. So you're pitting someone that's got a history of being a great swordsman with someone you've seen to be a great
sure
swordsman in a
have.
tavern fight. So
Yeah.
clearly both excellent military swordsmen, and they build that up. I think, and it doesn't matter because the film is what it is. It's the quality that it is. But you do notice, having watched modern day films when they have professional swords masters on training people, this feels like if they'd given me and you some swords and said, right, fight out something that looks like the duel, kind of thing that we might have been able to come up with. It's a bit slow and a bit kind of, but it doesn't matter. I'm taking the mick out of it in an affectionate way, but
Yeah.
it's not dynamic.
No, it's not. I mean, and it's those kinds of moments when the rough edges sort of show through, and the
Mm,
kind of, this is 70s Hammer horror. It is not like their best work, essentially.
yeah.
But this was, they were attempting to go in a new direction. So there'd been a lot of struggles going into the 70s at Hammer. They wanted to move into like, okay, can we create a new franchise? Can we go and try
Mm.
something else? It didn't work out. Captain Kronos was not particularly successful, but it's set up with Kronos and Ghost to basically be it's James Bond, right? It's vampire hunting James
Yeah.
Bond. They go off and
Would have been great.
I think it would
I
have been
wish there was
amazing.
more because I would
Yeah,
go and watch more now for
I
sure.
absolutely I would rush to the video store to rent out Captain Kronos 2 if it existed. Because yeah, it's completely set up for like what would be their next adventure. Now, interestingly, in 1976, they did do a three-part comic book sequel. So I'm
Ah.
very intrigued to check that
Oh,
out.
that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and then get this, in 2018, the comic book version was revived by none other than Dan Abnett,
Oh, wow. Okay.
which I've not read it, but I really want to read both of those two comic book series. I think that they're like, I just want, because I would love to. I think this is a really fun world. Sure, there are times when it's cheap, there's times when it's trashy, there's times when it's sort of, rough, but also it is inventive and it is fun, and they are trying to do something different with like vampire lore and vampire hunters. And yeah, the main guy isn't perfect,
Yeah.
but it's also like he looks good. He looks like a cool vampire hunting captain. and yeah, there's like I really enjoyed it. I had such a good
Yeah.
time with this. I'm a big fan. I'm a proper Kronos head now.
Yeah, if I knew there were more Hammer horror things that were very much like this, I would probably watch them. It's an interesting what you said about Dan Abnett there, that it's not quite full circle, but the path of maybe inspired some Warhammer, and it's gone on this path
Right.
and go back to an author that's obviously goes well beyond Warhammer, but in many ways definitely became more famous because of writing for
Sure, and
Warhammer,
has
or
played a
writing for
huge
Black Library.
role in modern
Yeah,
Warhammer's
and
history.
it's kind of, so it's crazy that he's written stuff. I'm gonna have to look those up myself actually. So
Yeah, yeah. But just really like really interesting. I mean, the artist, so it was Ian Gibson, the Judge Dredd
hmm,
artist who did 76 um the 76 sequel series. And Ian Gibson obviously as a Judge Dredd artist worked on the Games Workshop Judge Dredd board game, did the cover for that as well. So there's a couple of more direct links. But yeah, I mean, the fact that Rick Priestley has cited this and said, you know what, that is a film that speaks to our sort of original
yeah,
approach to Warhammer. But, you know, Warhammer goes in many different directions. I think one of the great things about Warhammer Fantasy is that it's proper horror at the same time as proper fantasy, at the same time as proper
hmm,
spoof and satire and silliness. You know, it has the Lord of the Rings, but it also has Board of the Rings in there as well. Like it's got
yeah,
both sides of that stuff. And I think that this film does that as well. There's silly stuff in this movie, but there's also some pretty cool horror ideas, and there's some pretty clever like detective elements, and then there's some flashy action scenes as well. You know, it is doing
yes,
a lot of different things and kind of pulling them together. I would highly recommend it for anybody who is like open minded to this, you know, cheap 70s or relatively cheap 70s movies. You're not going to be getting MCU level production values or what have you, but you are going to get a charming, I think, a charming little adventure movie.
yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, they are very different movies, but in like in the way in which they both sort of have, you know, they maybe have their slightly stiff but somehow endearing lead actors, and they have their rough around the edges trashiness and their kind of certain forgettable elements. But I think both movies are also quite inventive at times, and you know, the bottom line is, I at least think that they're both good fun, like, and they're also both
Yes,
very violent at times as well.
yes, yes. And they're both funny. I've just been thinking that, and the connection with Books Club again, with what we did with the original GW books, both of these could be short stories within those Warhammer books. So obviously, the Kronos would be a fantasy Wolfram style adventure, and Running Man would fit directly in as a dark future story. And we could have been talking about these as written short stories in those anthologies that we did as part of the Books Club,
Yeah.
and they feel that they would fit into it. And that wasn't the intention when I chose mine. I'm sure it wasn't the intention when you chose yours. There's a connection there, but it feels like we've discussed similar kind of stories that we have done many times before, which I think is quite interesting.
I think that's bang on. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I totally agree. And you wouldn't even have to change an awful lot to make either work.
No, nothing, I don't think. Nothing,
No.
because if the visuals for Kronos, he really is just changing a couple of swords, making them a bit wider, maybe,
Mm.
and changing his military jacket for a slightly one that looked 200 years older or something. Because most of the rest of the clothing kind of fits
Yeah.
with Wolf Fantasy anyway. There's next to nothing that you'd need to change at all. And then, well, for Running Man, you probably don't. You could just call that. You could just slap Dark Future on there, and it
Sure, that could literally just
fits
be
in.
in one of the cities, right?
Yeah, yeah.
In one of the I forget what the cities were called now, but the actual EZ. Wow, I'm gonna be thinking about that all night now. What the PZs? I think they were called
PZs, yes,
PZs,
yes.
PZs.
PZs,
Yeah,
PZs, yeah, yeah,
yeah. Like patrol zones. That's what it was. Yeah, so the sort of
yes,
safe cities. You absolutely could just have the Running Man take place, and there's even there is a short story in the Route 666 collection that is literally like you say. it's about a TV show, and it's
TV
about
show, yeah.
like
What I loved and you didn't like as
yeah,
much.
I
So
didn't like it too much at the time, but I'm reassessing now post Running Man. I'm back in on that. But yeah, the 2000 AD style stories, this kind of like satirical TV tales that could take place within these elements of the world. And yeah, I think you're right. I think that these are both movies that speak to a certain sort of like type of story that fits very nicely in earlier Games Workshop work.
yes, yeah, 100%.
Yeah, well, I think this has been a lot of fun, Stu. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me on. It's been great.
Anytime, yeah, because I think that's some great choices there, and I think it's been some really, really fun stuff to draw out. On the next episode of the Warhammer Film Club, I'm joined by Andy, aka the Remembrancer, to chat about sci-fi horrors, virus, and life force. And you can listen to the entire season right now at patreon.com/Jordan Sorcery.